thing I heard this morning is that if we were to privatize the Liquor Control Board, that would bring in money, and it would continue every year. I heard that this morning on the radio. What's your thoughts on that?
It's been an idea that's been kicked around a lot longer than I've been around, 20 years, 30 years. And so the latest proposal that has been rolled out, it was just mentioned by Representative Turzai from the Pittsburgh area. I haven't seen the details of that. There is a tremendous amount of revenue that comes in. I think one of the hesitations that folks have when you discuss the issue of privatization with the Liquor Control Board is what will that mean to the $600 million that we receive today? If there can be the continued projection of the dollars, I think people could be comfortable. And there's no question, and I think the Rendell administration's probably been better than most on this score of bringing the Liquor Control Board into the, I don't know if we've gotten to the 21st century, but we may have gotten to the 20th century in terms of consumer, the consumer. But that's an issue that I'd have to study a little bit more. I'm not certain on Mike Turzai's proposal. And again, an idea that's been around that long, you have to make sure you do a little bit more research on that, and you certainly can't lose the dollars that we're getting right now. And so I'd like to look at that a little bit more.
But I mean, that just goes back to one of the antiquated practices that we have in this state. I mean, most states, you know, it is privatized, and we're just still back in the Stone Ages where, you know, the state wants to control everything, and that being one of the things. So, you know, I look at that, but I think when you talk about Marcellus Shale, though, I mean, I agree with that, but on the other hand, does that mean that then we're going to tax the corporations that come here to a point where it's not even, it's not going to be advantageous for them to want to be here? I mean, obviously we have the reserve underneath us, but they also have it in New York, and they have it in West Virginia and parts of Ohio, I believe. So, I mean, one of the biggest gripes right now is no companies want to come here because our tax structure is horrible. Well, it hasn't changed, as far as I know, in years. I'm an accountant, and I remember from way back when. Well, we
starting with the Ridge administration, Ridge, and then the Schweiker administration, and then the Rendell, having served all those governors and supported fully Ridge and Schweiker's business tax cuts in phasing out the capital stock and franchise tax. The governors proposed reducing the corporate net income tax. So we've had significant tax cuts in businesses. In these last 3 years, it's been difficult. The phase out of the capital stock and franchise tax had to be suspended in the Schweiker years, and now again in the Rendell years. But there's no question. I think we can do better in terms of the business tax climate for businesses, particularly for small business. Again, back to that number. I always remember that number: 70% of small businesses paying that personal income tax as their corporate tax. That's why I fought against it, not to raise it, because it would have been a job crusher. And the majority of the jobs that are created, like Federal Review Services here on Public Square, they're less than 100 jobs. But they're significant, and they have significant impact in the community. So we need to get a better corporate tax structure in Pennsylvania. But in looking at the Marcellus Shale, I think we have to be aware of, one, we do have geography at our advantage. I think I had a great conversation with one of the members of the gas industry in the discussion on the tax. That it was very educational for me, is that be careful about looking at the other states. You have to look at the fine print, and that, yes, their number might be higher, but they may be taxing it at less than what you are proposing here in Pennsylvania. So that's fair. Let's have a fair discussion. I think the industry understands that it's not going to have a tax-free environment, especially when they don't have a tax-free environment in Oklahoma, Texas, and in these other states. So I think there is a responsible way, so we don't suffocate the job growth. And it's moving. I'll give you an example. Is when we put in last year's budget the limited drilling on state forest land and put that out to bid. We were anticipating $60 million in revenue. The businesses that came in and bid we're going to get $128 million in revenue, and doubled our money. So the interest is there. There's no question about that, and the resource is there. So it's how do you responsibly raise revenue without stifling jobs, without suffocating that industry in its infancy. So I think we can do that.
I just have one more.
Sure.
Transportation. The roads in northeastern Pennsylvania are horrible. We all know that. I mean, 81's a little bit better now that they're at least patching some of the holes. The bridges are getting redone. But I mean, where is the money going to come from? And with federal funds being cut on that, is that something that, and dovetailed on that is rail transportation. We just had an article in our paper in regards to the Rendell administration that didn't back the New York to Scranton project. Can you comment on that?
Yes, it's one of the issues, particularly on the rail issue, that I have a great passion for, and I think there's a state component of it, but there's the federal component and the national component. I believe Congress and the President missed a historic opportunity to set the stage for economic growth in this country for the next century by saying we are going to invest. Government only does a few things well. Government needs to stay out of a lot of things that it doesn't do well. But when the Eisenhower administration built the interstate highway system and had the vision, and I'm sure that there were critics, if you went back and looked in the newspaper at his party and saying, we're going to spend how much money on to build roads? What a vision to have about the future that president would never see. But where would we be as a country if we didn't have the interstate highway system? I believe they missed an opportunity with the economic stimulus package. That package should have been targeted to infrastructure. There's no question Pennsylvania is, with 49 other states, their infrastructure is failing. We have 300 miles today. We have 300 miles of highway that needs repair. Hundreds of structurally deficient bridges in Pennsylvania. The federal government needed to step up and set the tone and say, listen, we're going to invest stimulus dollars in getting these roads, investing in infrastructure, creating jobs, and on the rail component of creating the greatest passenger rail system in the world, in connecting the eastern seaboard, connecting the Midwest, what that would do for economic opportunity. Now, the state obviously is not going to be able to have the resources to do that, but that should be the space race of the 21st century, is that we are going to create the best infrastructure in the world, rail and land, and the federal government has missed that opportunity. I hope they can take that up, because when I'm doing my research, it was shocking to me that I believe we actually get less federal funding for highways in real dollars, in terms of real dollars, than we did during the Eisenhower administration. So the states had to pick up that load, and now you have the situation where we are going to be $450 million short this year in our transportation budget. The governor has called for a special session on transportation. I agree with him. I think we need to have that discussion. If we can't move goods and commerce, we are not going to be competitive economically with the rest of the world. And so we need to get a better strategy on how we raise revenue in terms of transportation. Tolling 80 was one of those situations where it was a bad idea, but unfortunately the only idea that could get the number of votes. I mean, there was nobody jumping up and down excited about tolling 80. I'm not thrilled with it. And there were issues with the privatization of the turnpike and the private-public partnership versus the public partnership. So there were a lot of issues there. There's no easy solution, and there's no easy answer, no easy rhetoric to gloss over the fact that is a significant problem. And when you put that on top of the pension crisis, when you put that on top of the revenue crisis in terms of our budget, we have serious challenges that require folks that are going to make serious, tough decisions about the future of Pennsylvania.